Hello. How's it going? We have a co host in the room with us today because he got anxious because he couldn't see me. He's sitting down there. Dogs are special. Um, Welcome back. I have not yet edited that first episode, so hopefully it wasn't complete and utter shit. But on the day that this comes out, which is April 9th, I have officially turned 36. Funny enough, somebody asked me a couple weeks ago how old I was, and I said I was 36. So I don't know where that one came from. 35 at the time of recording this. But turning the big 3-6, I feel like every year it's just like, how do I feel like I'm 20 in my brain, not in the body? I've broken a lot of bones. And I feel all of those. um, just crazy. And then my husband's 38, I think. $39. Oh no. Uh, but uh, but yeah, so every year I try and set like a goal of what I want to achieve. I succeeded in my 35 goals. And not sure what 36 is going to be quite yet. This continuing may be one of those things on the list. But I kind of mentioned in the last episode, obviously it's been 10 years. A lot has happened. And kind of wanted to walk through kind of like, here's where we're at. Here's the latest and greatest. Kind of the good, the bad, and the reality, just as a framing for kind of the rest of these going forward. So buckle up. We're going to chat for a bit. Kind of go back to the guy you saw last and kind of where we're at today. So the guy you saw last, not last episode, but last time I was actively on YouTube. I was starting my clinical rotations. I'll go in more depth, I believe. Yes, the next episode on my med school experience. But I was 100% in on actually going into trauma surgery. I initially thought actually that plastic surgery was what I wanted to do. Almost fell asleep in the OR doing a cosmetics procedure, and then also had to do some of the post-op work. Uh, and holy shit, man, like that is nightmare scenario. Clientele. So I knew that wasn't for me. And then I won't talk about it because it's a bit of a trigger warning. There was an emergency in the emergency room that happened right in front of me. And I just kind of like locked in. ADD gone, like totally zeroed in. I am thinking about this and only this. Went up to the OR, helped with the procedure, followed that patient for quite some time. And it was like getting a hit of what I would imagine a drug like heroin would give you. It was like all the adrenaline was there. It was focused exactly on what I was doing. At that point in my life, I was single. I was totally down to be that trauma surgeon, like those of you who have rotated in medicine or work with trauma surgeons know, uh, it's a special breed of human being. And I was really proud to like find my community there. Uh, Not great lives outside of uh, the hospital. Um, but I loved it. I was all in. I applied to residency, and as an international medical school graduate, there's different expectations. Again, we'll go over that in that episode. But long story short, I applied 3 times, got interviews each time, just didn't end up getting selected in the match process, which is how you get a residency. Um, and that mentally kicked my whole ass in not a good way. And at a certain point, like I couldn't sleep. I was having like back spasms that would make it so that I couldn't breathe. I would be going into, at that point in time, I was working at the research lab. I would, wake up at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, and just go in to work and work on stuff. Not in a healthy headspace. Investing in Tito's stock, not actually, but through purchase power. And so at that point, I kind of looked at my now husband, and we both were like, I have to be done. We have to put a period at the end of the sentence. Did everything I could. I mean, it's thousands of dollars to apply every year, especially the way that we were doing it back then. I think it's changed recently. And so then kind of, did the farewell to practicing medicine and kind of leaned into what I was doing at that point in time, which was research. I was working for or with a neurosurgeon who has a reputation. And so that also wasn't going to be an answer, right? Like, with them, I could not stay on. But I needed a job. And as I think I mentioned in the last episode, the inertia of going from like, okay, I'm saying goodbye to clinical practice, I'm in research, but how do I make this a financially viable career, right? I've invested a ton of money in this education. I have certain expectations for how I want my life to look. And Google searches turned up absolute garbo in terms of what opportunities I had. And I also didn't have a network outside of, the people that I was working with and for. And so that was tough. I felt super stuck, and then was lucky enough that the postdoc that was also in the lab graduated, went to the company I'm now at, and kind of extended the olive branch and said, "Hey, you should, come over here and try this out." That was awesome. Startups, which we'll get into in a later episode, are a very unique situation, but I kept my foot on the gas like I was a 4th-year medical student trying to impress every surgeon in the hospital, and have consistently worked of my own volition at least 60-hour weeks for the last 4.5 years. 4 years. I took my foot off the gas recently. Um, and I'm grateful that I did that. But at a certain point, you realize when you go and, meet up with friends, which honestly don't do very often. Super sorry to all my friends out there who I love you dearly. I think about you all the time. When you are so consumed with work and so overly invested, right? Like let's call it what it is. I could get hit by a bus today. Yes, they're losing intellectual IP that I have, but they're just going to backfill the role. Which I don't think there's a lot of times that, we're driving value 100%, but every once in a while you have to just like take a second and be like, actually, should I be working 60 hours a week, dreaming about work, waking up in the morning terrified about this thing, that thing, saying yes to every ask? That my 2024 was a yes to every ask, which comes with pros and cons. Cons, I lived on fucking airplanes. Lived on them. I would get home, wash my clothes, put them back, get my suit dry cleaned, put it back in a suitcase the next week, and be off. And there were weeks where I was out in San Francisco because there's a lot of obviously tech, but also pharmaceutical companies out there that we work with. I'd be out there, and then the next week I'm in New York for an AWS event or something else, and bouncing constantly between different places, very rarely anywhere close. We've got, a couple things that we do in Chicago, but in the space that I work in med tech, med device, pharma, they're all on the coast. And over the last, I would say, 2 months, I just reached I cannot do this anymore spot where everything can't be work. There has to be some level of just like humanity. And I have to prioritize things in my personal life that are my goals in the same way that I'm prioritizing things currently in my work life. And I'm probably 2 years behind when I should have had that revelation. For example, my husband and I have talked about having kids since date 3. We are considering surrogacy. We even, at the beginning of 2024, purchased 2 little like Air Jordan Nikes because we want to have twins, and put it on our dining room table so that we would see it every day and remind ourselves that we need to reach out to the agencies, do all of the stuff that you have to do just even to get started, right? Get a financial planner, do all that other crap because it's incredibly expensive, but something that we are both dedicated to pursuing. We didn't do any of that last year. And that's not because our desire is any different. We totally want to do that and soon because we're both getting older. But the activation energy for doing that was too high because all of my tokens or battery juice or whatever analogy, all of that was tapped into work. And that's crazy. That's not right. uh, we didn't see friends, family. Like, there's a ton of things that we didn't do because we were just working the way that we're working. Um, and you get nominal praise, and you get, oh, here's an award, or here's this, or whatever. Great, fine. But ultimately, we come home from work, we talk about work, you mind numb with a cocktail and, bullshit TV, and then wake up the next day and you go right into work. And I am much worse, or not much worse. I'm worse about it than he is, but I then will go because I wake up early or earlier. Um, he works much later than I do during the week. So on the weekends, he'll sleep into like noon or whatever, which is awesome for him. My body doesn't do that. So I'll wake up at 8. Scrappy has to go out. I'll just then go to work, play some tunes, work on the latest deck that I need for that thing, or a webinar that we're going to do with this company, to the point that I have probably badged into that office 7 days a week, 40 weeks a year. Again, not normal. And also not giving myself time to do the things that we want to do, like start looking at having kids. We're starting to look at buying a house. We rent right now, which is fine. There's pros and cons on both sides of that coin, especially given the current interest rate situation. But I'm not even providing myself the time or energy to look into these things, which are our personal goals. And between kind of that revelation and some bullshit at work, I finally had oh, we can't do this. It's time for new problems. It's time to go reset somewhere else. And it's time to go through the mental exercises and the work to make sure that when I go to the next place, I'm not repeating old habits. It is always so much easier just to fall back into what you know, right? Especially when you're going to a new place where you are looking to grow. It's not like, oh, cool, I want this job. It's like, I want this job, but I want to then do more with you. The instinct to overdo is very strong. I am one of the worst about that. But what I'm trying to do is not, and to also start other things that are going to be taking my time, right? This is an example. I wanted to do this because instead of going in to work today, which is a Sunday, I set all this ish up and am sitting down to do this, right? And then sitting down to edit it and those sorts of things. I'm reaching out to IVF places that have egg donors, to surrogacy agencies, to those sorts of people. It's a little uncomfortable. There is work that I know I should be doing, but it has to be done. You have to course correct. And I don't want to wake up one day and be like, we missed out on all of this for what? There's no, if I was to genuinely rank, like, what are the things that matter the most to me right now, it is starting a family. But yet in actions and in practice, that's not represented the same way, right? And so we're kind of doing a like turn it off and turn it back on and potentially reset to factory settings of life. And hopefully unlearning a bunch of behaviors that, they have served me career-wise. There's no question. I have much better opportunities and kind of, as I mentioned last episode, the opportunity to design my career because I put in the amount of effort and networking and all these things that are not natural to me at all. I am way more an introvert than I am an extrovert. So it has been a good thing that I've done what I've done, but that now's the time to kind of take a step back. You've done the work, leverage it, but set ourselves up for the next version of life. One of the things I mentioned, I set goals for myself every year. 34, one of the thing, or 35. One of the things I set for 35 was that I needed to like have a fucking hobby. Because I think I started saying this and I must have lost the train of thought earlier, but when you go and you see friends and family that you haven't seen for a while and they're like, oh, what's new? And the only thing you have to talk about is work. It's a little bit sad. More than a little bit sad. and so I said, okay, you have to get a hobby, whatever the fuck that is, right? Every once in a while I'll get a spurt of energy and I'll redo a room or something. And behind me, I've made a bunch of like minimalist art like that for our place. But that's like one weekend and then you're done. Like I need something that's consistent. And so one of the things that I did as a kid that I absolutely loved, it was honestly my personality. In elementary school, maybe even junior high, that was horseback riding. So I jumped horses as much as you can as you're like a little kid on a fat pony. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to get back into horseback riding. Bought all the shit, the boots, the whole get up, found a barn that's like 30 minutes from us and signed up. It was awesome. I like genuinely opened up another part of like my brain and my heart that it's been obviously closed for a long time. And I loved it. And I was going and I was like even doing it in the morning. So it was, I'd ride at 8, so I'm not even online again until like 10 a.m. and, felt like a rebel in in doing that, which is insane. Uh got thrown into a wall twice, which wasn't the best, but still loved it. Was like actually getting the muscle memory back of like, oh right, this is, there's a lot of like core and leg muscles that you don't use as a human being walking around in life that you use trying to stay on top of a horse as they're jumping things. Um, but it was awesome. I was loving it. I was loving it. And even that with like, I felt like I was good. I had done like 8 lessons, like usually once a week. And even that got just sucker punched by work. And, I had to travel multiple weeks in a row and do all this other shit. And then the holidays came up and it was so easily reverted back to, oh, well, no, it's too much energy to text the trainer that I'm ready for the next lesson. And my my parents were like so proud that they're like, you're doing something for yourself. This is awesome. Keep it up. Da, 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 da. And we saw them the other week and I was like, oh, are you riding again? And I'm like, no. So shows you how easily, even if you're trying, for me, trying to make a change, investing the time, the money, for me, I hate part of my new anxious human being syndrome. I hate making initial phone calls or emails or things like that to, let's say, a barn and asking like, hey, do you do lessons? It looks like you do on your website. Because what if they are like, no, you have to be referred, or no, we don't do lessons, or no, this isn't even a barn, which is so stupid, so fucking stupid. But I get really weird about those sorts of things. And so it was like a big deal that I did this and whatever. And even now that has fallen off. And something that I need to put back on the truck in addition to these sorts of things. But that just kind of, I think, demonstrates where I'm at. The reality of what the last 10 years has done to my brain and my activation and the mental rust that comes with the mentality of a med student. And as I mentioned, like I have kind of been proud of the fact that I overwork and I do all these things. And for any of you who are in med school, have been in med school, or know someone in med school, that is the only path to survival, is pushing yourself way beyond your limits of stress and insomnia and how many substances can I put in my body to somehow keep me physically awake. Cognitively, there are so many things I look back on. I'm like, you were in the library for 18 hours, but you should have only been there for 6 because the other 12 was just like Red Bull tweaker status and you didn't actually retain anything. But in the US, that is the expectation, that you drive yourself beyond what would ever be acceptable in really any other setting. I know my sister is a lawyer, so she went to a very prestigious law school. Similar experience. It is kind of crazy uh, when you actually take a step back and look at it. There are so many times that you know, especially when we were kind of like in med school and law school, respectively, parents, friends, or whoever would ask, uh, "Hey, like my kid is thinking about going into medicine or going into law or going into whatever. Would you mind talking to them and kind of giving them some insight?" And I would always say, "Happy to. What is the goal?" Because I can give them a realistic view of what that looks like, or I can encourage them. They're two different speeches. The reality, or do you want me to kind of help guide them into something? And more often than not, you know, they'd ask, "Well, I guess what is your honest opinion?" And we just kind of touch on a couple things. And I think I helped dip the decline the number of applicants, because it's like there's a lot of it's incredibly expensive. You are asked to do things that are at times inhumane. You're pitted against the top of the top people in your class. You're vying for positions that are not guaranteed, vying for specialties, that sort of stuff. And for some people, you then can turn that off post residency, because it has to go through residency too. Um, and I have realized that I've never turned that dial back down. And especially looking at Gen Z and the way that they put boundaries around their work, their time, what they're willing to do, what they're not willing to do. It's antithetical to the way that I operate, so I will never be there. But it's eye-opening to be like, no, you don't actually have to jump on a call at 10 p.m. When I sit at home, I have my laptop, my phone, Slack is always open. If someone pings me, you know, "Hey, I've got a question. Do you have 10 minutes?" If I'm in the middle of a show sitting with Brett and, you know, having dinner, I'll get up and take the call. That's not normal. Just if anyone was thinking, it's not fucking normal. And so I've started to realize those sorts of things. There was a point where we had a doc writer who lived on the East Coast. I'm obviously Central Time, but they were like early morning people. You know, best to have a conversation before 7 a.m. their time. And they worked for me. I didn't bat an eye. I got up, I was on calls at 5:30 in the morning with them. And that, yes, of course, of course, of course, of course, response is not normal. And sets a precedent that you will do anything if asked. And I'll say that is how I am perceived right now. I've got teeth to it. I'm not just saying I'm not a yes man, but I love saying no. It's one of my favorite things to do at work. But in terms of like, will you take the call? Yeah, I'm gonna. So, kind of looking at where I am in life, I've overworked myself. I've done a lot, which I'm really actually proud of. I have neglected myself, my friends, my family, time that should have been spent relaxing or enjoying the hard work, and instead have kind of bundled or try to like hyper condense doing that with like a big trip. Right? I signed off on 2024 because all the work I did in 2024, because then we went to Bora Bora for 12 days. And it was amazing. And I absolutely loved it. But it took flying almost across the world to put the laptop down. And I still took calls. And so, and I love that we can do, we're in a spot in life where we can do these amazing trips, and it's awesome for Brett and I to get away and to go just have time, the two of us, and experience things and explore. But we need to distribute some real lifetime and some happiness and experiences and reinvest basically back into reality and not keep defunding that part of life. Because I really don't want to be 85 on my deathbed and they're like, what did you accomplish in life? And all I can talk about is the company I started or the highest position I got at, said company. We got to have a little bit more to that. So what we're going to try and do here is, again, I want to go dig deep on a couple of these, topics. The next episode will be about Caribbean medical schools, but that, I hope that this framed up kind of we're here. There's a lot of good stuff that I've been able to accomplish. There's some bullshit we had to go through to get here. And there is in between that the reality of what that means. And the reality is where I've been operating is not going to, or I guess it's just not conducive with the life I actually want to have. And so, got to make some changes. And on paper, they seem like fun changes. I should get hobbies again. I should do something that's fun. I should go see my friends. But we've got to break the other side of that, which is the workaholic, crazy person. Yay. So that is going to be the end of this episode. Hopefully this was somewhat interesting, if you can, well, ADD, there was a fire truck. If you can relate to any of this, let me know. If you've got any good recommendations of books or podcasts or TED Talks or whatever that you think would apply, drop them in the comment section. And yeah, I will see you guys next time, and we will be chatting about the wonderful world of Caribbean medical schools. Talk to you later.